I grew up feeling like a shadow in my own home, always second to my older brother in my mother's eyes, a stranger in the place I was supposed to belong. If you've ever felt like you didn't belong in your own family, please like this video or leave a comment so I know I'm not alone. My childhood home was a small, two-story house in Asheville, North Carolina, nestled in a quiet neighborhood where the air smelled of pine and wildflowers bloomed in the backyard. The wooden floors creaked underfoot, and the kitchen always carried the faint scent of Mom's baking banana bread or oatmeal cookies, depending on her mood. I was the youngest of two, born 3 years after my brother, Ethan, in the spring of 1995. From the outside, we were a picture-perfect family. Mom cooked hearty dinners. Dad worked long hours at a hardware store. And we'd spend summers at Lake Lure, splashing in the water or roasting marshmallows under the stars. I loved those days, the way the world felt safe and whole. But even as a kid, I sensed a crack in that picture, a tilt in the way love was doled out. By the time I was 10, I couldn't ignore it. Mom's love for Ethan was a bright, blazing sun, and I was just a cloud drifting in its shadow. Ethan was the golden child. At 13, he was tall, with a mop of chestnut hair and a smile that could charm anyone. He was a star soccer player, the kind of kid who scored the winning goal and had the whole town cheering. Teachers adored him, neighbors raved about his manners, and Mom looked at him like he was her entire world. I was different, quieter, introspective, always tucked away with my sketchbook, drawing flowers or imaginary worlds. I'd read under the big oak tree out back, lost in books like The Secret Garden or A Wrinkle in Time. I wasn't loud or flashy, but I felt things deeply, and I loved my family with a fierceness that sometimes scared me. I thought that love would be enough to make me matter as much as Ethan. I was wrong. Mom wasn't cruel, not in the way you might think. She'd hug me goodnight, pack my lunches with little notes, cheer at my school plays, her voice loud in the auditorium. But with Ethan, it was different, like she poured all her light into him. She'd sit at the kitchen table for hours, helping him with math homework, her laughter filling the room when he cracked a joke. When I asked for help with my spelling, she'd say, "You'll figure it out, sweetie," and turn back to him. She'd display his soccer trophies on the living room mantel, polishing them until they gleamed. But my art awards ribbons from school contests, certificates for my paintings stayed tucked in a kitchen drawer, buried under old receipts. I'd pull them out sometimes, tracing the words with my finger, wondering why they didn't deserve a place next to Ethan's. I remember one moment, clear as day, when I was 12. I'd won a school art contest for a watercolor of the Blue Ridge Mountains, my first real prize. I ran home, the certificate clutched in my hands, bursting to show Mom. She was on the phone in the kitchen, her voice bright as she bragged about Ethan's latest soccer game. "He's going places," she said, laughing. I stood in the doorway, waiting for her to hang up, my heart pounding with hope. When she did, I held up the certificate, grinning. She glanced at it, said, "That's nice, honey," and then asked if I'd seen Ethan's new cleats. I mumbled something and went to my room, the certificate crumpling in my fist. I cried into my pillow, the kind of sobs that hurt your chest, wondering what I'd done to make her love me less. By high school, the divide was undeniable. Ethan was 17, captain of the soccer team, with colleges sending scouts to his games. He had this effortless charisma, the kind that made people gravitate toward him. I was 14, still figuring out who I was, spending lunch periods in the art room, painting murals or sketching portraits. I wasn't unpopular, but I kept to myself, more comfortable with a paintbrush than a crowd. Mom would drive 3 hours to Ethan's away games, her car packed with snacks and signs that said, "Go Ethan." when I had an art show at school, showcasing a series of charcoal drawings I'd worked on for months. She'd say she was too tired or had a shift at the library where she worked part-time. I'd nod, swallowing the hurt, pretending it didn't sting. Dad tried to make up for it. He'd show up to my exhibits, his work boots still dusty, clapping so loud it embarrassed me. But Dad was always at the store, managing inventory late into the night, so his presence was a rare gift. Most days, it was just me, carrying the weight of being second best. I started keeping a mental tally of the slights, each one a pebble in a pile that grew too heavy to ignore. The time Mom spent $200 on Ethan's new soccer gear but said my art supplies were too expensive. The way she'd cancel plans with me to help Ethan with college applications, leaving me to eat dinner alone. The Christmas when she gave him a new phone, and me a scarf she'd clearly bought last minute. I'd tell myself I was overreacting, that she loved me in her own way. But at night, I'd lie in bed, sketching in the dark, my pencil scratching out the pain I couldn't say aloud. I'd wonder if I was invisible to her, if I'd ever be enough. When Ethan got a full athletic scholarship to UNC, Mom threw a party that felt like a town festival. She rented a tent, hired a caterer, invited neighbors, co-workers, even people I barely knew. The backyard was strung with fairy lights, and she stood by Ethan, her arm around him, beaming as she said, "This is what we've worked for." I was 15 standing on the edges, holding a plate of cake I didn't eat. I'd just gotten accepted into a summer art program, a competitive one that only took 20 kids. I'd told Mom the week before, and she'd nodded, said, "That's great." Then changed the subject to Ethan's training schedule. At the party, I waited for her to mention my news, to pull me into the spotlight for just a moment. She didn't. I slipped away to my room, the music fading behind me, and drew until my fingers ached, trying to drown out the ache in my chest. By the time I was 18, the hurt had hardened into something else, bitterness, maybe, or a quiet resolve. Ethan had just graduated college, and Mom was planning a big homecoming for him, like he was a hero returning from war. I was in my first year at a local college, studying graphic design, and I'd landed a freelance gig designing a logo for a cafe in downtown Asheville. It was small, but it was mine. My first step into a career I loved. I was proud. The kind of proud that makes your chest swell. I invited Mom to the cafe's opening, where my logo, a swirling tree with roots that spelled the cafe's name, would be unveiled on their sign. I thought, maybe this time, she'd see me. She promised she'd be there, her voice warm over the phone. I spent the day of the opening buzzing with nerves, checking my phone, adjusting my dress, watching the door, the cafe filled with people friends, the owner, even a local reporter, but Mom never came. Hours later, she texted, "Sorry, Ethan needed help moving into his new place." I stood outside, staring at my logo glowing under the streetlights, feeling like I'd been punched. I wasn't just second place. I was nothing. That night, in my dorm, I sat on my bed, my sketchbook open, but blank. The hurt was a storm inside me, years of it swirling together every missed art show, every half-hearted good job, every time I'd begged for her to see me. I could have confronted her, stormed home and demanded to know why Ethan was her everything and I was her afterthought. I pictured it yelling until my throat was raw, tears streaming, telling her how it felt to be invisible. But what would that do? She'd deny it, say she loved us the same, and I'd know she was lying. I could have cut her off, stopped calling, stopped visiting. But that felt like losing the scraps of family I still had. Instead, I made a choice. The hardest one I'd ever made. I'd stopped chasing her love. I'd build a life where I didn't need her approval to feel whole. Letting go was a slow, jagged process. I'd go home for holidays, and the old wounds would reopen. I'd see Ethan's college diploma framed in the living room, his engagement photo on the fridge, while my designs, posters, logos, even a magazine cover were nowhere to be found. I'd call Mom, hoping for a real talk, but she'd pivot to Ethan, his new job at a sports marketing firm, his girlfriend, his plans to buy a house. Each call left me hollow, my fingers gripping the phone as I fought the urge to beg for her attention. I kept trying, though, like a habit I couldn't break. I'd email her my latest projects, invite her to gallery shows where my work was displayed, hoping for a flicker of the pride she gave Ethan. Sometimes she'd come, but her eyes would drift, her compliments vague, like she was already thinking of him. The bitterness grew, a knot in my chest I couldn't untangle. I'd see moms with their daughters at coffee shops, laughing, and feel a pang so sharp I'd look away. I'd wonder what was wrong with me, why I wasn't enough. I started pulling back, skipping family dinners when I could, citing work or deadlines. Dad noticed, calling to check in, his voice heavy with worry. "Your mom loves you," he'd say, but even he sounded unsure. I wanted to believe him, but the evidence was stacked against it. I'd drive past our old house sometimes, the oak tree looming in the yard, and feel like a ghost, haunting a place that never really wanted me. When I was 25, the weight of it nearly broke me. I'd built a solid career as a freelance designer, living in a small loft in Asheville with exposed brick walls and a skylight that let in the morning sun. My work was gaining traction. Local businesses loved my logos, and I'd even done a mural for a community center. I was proud, but Mom's indifference cast a shadow over it. That year, Ethan got engaged to a sweet woman named Claire, and Mom threw herself into the wedding like it was her life's purpose. She called me to help, asking me to design the invitations, pick venues, even choose table settings. I wanted to say no, to tell her I wasn't her assistant, but I said yes, hoping, stupidly, that it might bring us closer. The wedding planning was a blur of tasks. Mom's voice sharp with excitement as she gushed over Claire's dress or Ethan's vows. I poured hours into the invitations, hand-drawing floral borders that took weeks to perfect. At a family dinner, a month before the wedding, Mom held up the invitations, smiling. "These are beautiful," she said, and my heart leapt. Then she added, "Ethan's so lucky to have you helpin'." My smile froze. It wasn't about me, it was about him. Always him. Later, at the same dinner, she said, "Ethan's making us so proud. He's building a family." I waited, my fork hovering, for her to mention my mural, my career, anything. Silence. I excused myself, slipped into the bathroom, and cried, the mirror reflecting a face I barely recognized. The hurt was as raw as it had been at 12, standing in the kitchen with my crumpled certificate. I knew I had to change something, or the pain would swallow me whole. I started therapy, something I'd avoided because it felt like admitting defeat. My therapist, Lisa, was a soft-spoken woman with a knack for asking questions that cut deep. She helped me see that Mom's favoritism wasn't about me, it was about her dreams, her need to live through Ethan's achievements. Maybe she saw him as her second chance, a way to make up for the life she'd wanted but never had. It didn't erase the hurt, but it gave me a lens to understand it. Lisa taught me about boundaries, about protecting my heart without closing it off. I started calling Mom less, visiting only when I felt strong enough to face her. I stopped sending her my designs, stopped inviting her to shows. Each step felt like losing her all over again, but it also felt like saving myself. The years that followed were a slow climb. I threw myself into my work, designing for bigger clients a brewery, a bookstore, even a music festival. My loft became my sanctuary, filled with plants and sketches pinned to the walls. I built a family of friends, Nora, who'd known me since high school, and Sam, a fellow designer who'd drag me to karaoke nights. They saw me, celebrated me, in ways Mom never did. I'd still feel the ache sometimes, especially at holidays, when I'd go home and see Ethan's life displayed like a museum exhibit. But I learned to let it pass, to focus on the life I was building. I'd drive to the mountains, sketch the ridges and valleys, and feel a quiet pride in who I'd become. The hardest moment came last year, when I was 30. Mom called, her voice bright, asking me to design a photo book for Ethan's first child, a baby girl named Lily. The request hit like a wave, dragging me back to every time I'd been asked to serve Ethan's story. I wanted to say no, to tell her I was done being the backdrop to his life. I sat with the phone in my hand, my thumb hovering over the screen, imagining the words, "I'm not your assistant. Mom, I'm your daughter." But I didn't say it. Instead, I said yes. Not for her, but for me. I decided this would be my final act, a way to prove I could love without needing her to love me back. I poured my heart into that photo book. I spent weeks designing it, choosing soft colors, delicate fonts, layouts that made Ethan's family photos glow. I included a page for Lily's birth announcement, a tiny hand-drawn lily in the corner, my signature touch. It was beautiful, the kind of work that made my chest swell with pride. When I mailed it to Mom, I didn't expect her to call, didn't expect her to gush. She sent a text a week later. "The book is lovely. Thank you." Her words were polite, distant, like a note to a coworker. I read it, set my phone down, and felt a strange calm. I'd done it for myself, to show I could create something beautiful without her validation. For the first time, I didn't need her to see me. I saw myself. Letting go didn't mean I stopped loving Mom. I still do, in a quiet, complicated way. I see her at family gatherings, her hair grayer now, her smile still brightest for Ethan. It hurts, watching her light up when he talks about Lily, his job, his life. But I've accepted it. The sad truth that her love for me will never match what she gives him. It's a wound that may never fully heal, but it doesn't define me anymore. I'm not the girl who cried over a crumpled certificate, who waited for a spotlight that never came. I've built a home in my art, my friendships, the moments when I sit under that oak tree, now taller than the house, sketching the world as I see it. I've learned that family isn't just the one you're born into. It's the one you choose. The one that chooses you back. Sometimes, I think about what might have been if I'd confronted Mom. Would she have changed if I'd pulled away completely? Would I have found peace sooner? But I don't regret the path I took. It was messy, painful, but it led me to myself. I'm still learning, still growing, still figuring out how to love a family that doesn't always love me back. But I'm okay. I'm more than okay, I'm whole. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Leave a comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this. Maybe you felt like an outsider in your own family, or found a way to let go of a hurt that held you back. Share your story. I'd love to hear it. Until next time, keep building the home you deserve, the one where you're never a stranger.